Welcome back to Hockey Eastern Ontario's Rule of the Week, where each week we take a rule from the Hockey Canada rulebook and break it down for our officials, our coaches, and our players so they can better understand the rule and how it can be applied in a game situation. Do you know the difference between an instigator penalty and an aggressor penalty? What is the call on the ice for either? And can they be called outside of a fighting situation? Stay tuned to find out. So today we're going to talk a little bit about instigating penalties and aggressor penalties and tell you a little bit about how they can be applied in a game situation. Let's get right to the definitions. Rule 7.11 defines an instigator as a player who, by their demeanor or physical or verbal actions, is responsible for starting or causing a fight based on any one or more of the following criteria: throwing or attempting to throw the first punch, thus forcing their opponent to defend themselves by engaging in an otherwise undesired fight; verbal invitation, instigation, or threat, thus forcing their opponent to defend themselves by engaging in an otherwise undesired fight; being the first player to remove gloves and throw a punch without their opponent's compliance; the distance traveled to an altercation or traveled to an altercation for the purpose of starting a fight; attempting to throwing, or continuing to throw punches at an opponent who has physically or verbally expressed an unwillingness to fight; attempting to throwing, or continuing to throw punches at an opponent who is in a defenseless position; aggressive attitude or posture towards an opponent, forcing their opponent to defend themselves by engaging in an undesired fight; or retaliation for legal or illegal action, thus forcing their opponent to defend themselves by engaging in an otherwise undesired fight. So to put it in simple terms, an instigator is someone who instigates a fight on the ice with another player. They would be considered the person who started the fight and would receive the extra penalty. An aggressor is the player who attempts to continue a fight by throwing or attempting to throw punches, or by continuing the grappling action with their opponent with the intent of intimidation or punishment of that opponent, including, but not limited to, situations in which their opponent is no longer able to continue the fight or is in a defenseless position. The aggressor may or may not be the instigator of the fight. Again, in simple terms, an aggressor penalty is assessed to a player who is an aggressor in a fight, who continues to fight within a player, essentially after the fight is over, or they continue to punch or hit a player when they're in a defenseless position. So what are the penalties for these? Well, a minor penalty will be assessed to a player who is deemed to have instigated a fight. A minor penalty can also be assessed to a player who is deemed to be an aggressor in a fight. A player can be assessed both an instigator and an aggressor in a fight. So how can a player receive both an instigating penalty and an aggressor penalty in the same stoppage of play? Well, essentially, they would instigate or start a fight, and then they would be the aggressor in that fight, meaning that they would continue to hit a player who's in a defenseless position or who no longer wishes to fight if they decided to fight at all. In that case, the player would be assessed a 2-minute minor penalty for instigating, plus a 2-minute minor penalty for being the aggressor, plus a major penalty in a game misconduct for fighting, plus any other penalties they incur. It's important to note you don't actually have to call both. So you can actually give a player an instigating penalty and a game misconduct and a 5-minute major for fighting, or you could call them for being an aggressor plus a major and a game misconduct for fighting. Keep in mind, though, that in order to call the instigator or aggressor penalties, a fighting major must be called, okay? In a one-person fight, we typically give the player an instigating penalty. If they're instigating the fight and they are an aggressor in that same fight, then we would go 2 + 2 + 5 in a game for fighting. I hope that helps you understand a little bit about the instigator and aggressor penalties and how they can be applied in a game situation. As always, if you have any questions for me, please do not hesitate to reach out. My email address is below. You can also reach out to your local referee-in-chief or your district referee-in-chief if you have any questions about any of these videos that we produce. You can also reach out to the referee-in-chief of Hockey Eastern Ontario. His name is John Reed, and his contact information is below as well. We encourage you to like, share, subscribe to this video so that you get all the latest content on our Rules of the Week or any other videos we produced here. Until next week, have a safe and wonderful week, and we'll see you back here real soon. All the best.